Have you ever felt like your body is fighting a war against, well, itself? It turns out that's not too far from the truth sometimes. Today, we're diving into the 4 major ways your immune system can completely overreact, a process known as hypersensitivity.
I mean, you've probably wondered this, right? Especially when you're sneezing your way through spring. Why on earth does our internal defense system, the very thing designed to protect us, sometimes just go haywire and launch a full-scale attack on something totally harmless?
Well, the scientific name for this is hypersensitivity, and honestly, the best way to think about it is friendly fire from your own immune system. It's this completely over-the-top reaction that ends up causing way more harm than good, leading to everything from a simple runny nose to some pretty serious tissue damage. Let's kick things off with the one we're all most familiar with.
All right, this is type I, the immediate reaction. This is your classic allergy. We're talking hay fever, food allergies, that sudden itch from a bee sting. It's fast, it's furious, and it's all driven by one very specific, very dramatic molecule.
Meet immunoglobulin E, or just IgE for short. This is the antibody that basically specializes in allergic freakouts. Most people have teeny tiny amounts of it, but in allergic individuals, the body just churns out massive quantities of IgE when it sees something it thinks is a threat, even when it's not.
So how does this actually go down? Well, the very first time you encounter something like pollen, your body doesn't actually have a huge reaction. Instead, it gets sensitized. It starts producing a ton of these IgE antibodies, which then go and attach themselves to guard cells in your tissues called mast cells. Think of them as a little landmines. They just sit there, waiting. Then the second time that same pollen shows up, it latches onto the IgE and boom! It triggers the mast cell to basically explode, dumping its entire chemical arsenal all over the place.
And let me tell you, that chemical arsenal is packed. Histamine is the famous one. It's what causes all that swelling and itching we associate with allergies. But you've also got things like leukotrienes, which are incredibly powerful and a major culprit in asthma attacks. All of these chemicals work together to ramp up the inflammation and call in even more immune cells to the party.
And all of this chemical chaos is what leads to the conditions we all recognize, from the annoying sniffles of hay fever to the truly life-threatening reaction of anaphylaxis. The underlying process is exactly the same. IgE and mast cells just absolutely overreacting to a harmless trigger.
Okay, moving on to type 2. This one is a little different. It's basically a case of mistaken identity. See, here, the immune system isn't attacking something foreign like pollen. It's actually targeting our own cells. The key players here are different antibodies, IgG and IgM. What they do is latch onto a target on one of our own cells, essentially painting a giant bullseye on it. This is a signal for other parts of the immune system to come in and either blow the cell up directly or just swallow it whole and destroy it.
A perfect and pretty scary example of this is a bad blood transfusion. If someone with type B blood accidentally receives type A blood, their antibodies will see those donated red blood cells as a foreign invader and launch a massive type 2 attack, destroying them right there in the bloodstream. Now for type 3. Okay, if type 2 is friendly fire on a fixed target, type 3 is more like a plumbing problem. Yeah. It's not about attacking one specific cell, but about dealing with these tiny, floating clumps of immune debris that just clog up the whole system.
So in this case, both the bad guy, the antigen, and the antibody are just floating freely in your blood. They find each other and bind together, forming these things called immune complexes. Now normally, your body's great at cleaning these up. But when there are just too many of them, these tiny clumps get stuck in small blood vessels, especially in places like your kidneys and joints. And that's where they cause a ton of inflammation and damage.
So let's make this crystal clear. Here's the crucial difference. In type 2, the target is stuck to a cell, making the attack super direct. But in type 3, the target is free-floating, and the damage is indirect. It's caused by those clumps getting lodged in tissues and triggering a bunch of collateral damage. It's the fixed base versus the clogged plumbing.
And finally, we have type 4, which, just decides to play by a completely different set of rules. It doesn't use antibodies at all, and it's definitely not immediate. This is the delayed reaction, the slow burn of the immune world.
So the star player here is a completely different kind of immune cell, the T cell. Yep, no antibodies involved whatsoever. Instead, specialized T cells are the ones that orchestrate the attack. And that's exactly why it can take 1 to 3 whole days to really develop. This is the mechanism behind that awful itchy rash you get from poison ivy, or the little bump from a TB skin test.
So let's just put it all together real quick. This table really shows the 4 types side by side. You can see how we go from the super-fast, IgE-driven type 1, through the antibody-based type 2 and 3, all the way to the slow, T-cell-driven type 4. Each one has its own unique timing, its own key player, and its own way of causing trouble.
Okay, so this all begs a bigger question. Why do allergies and these kinds of reactions seem to be getting more and more common? Well, that brings us to a really fascinating modern theory that connects our immune system directly to our environment.
This is the heart of what's called the hygiene hypothesis. So, for most of human history, our IgE antibodies were super busy fighting off things like parasitic worms. But in our modern ultra-clean world, there just aren't many parasites to fight anymore. So the theory goes that our now unemployed IgE system kind of gets bored and starts picking fights with totally harmless things like dust mites and pet dander.
And you can actually see this trend play out across the globe. In regions of the world with a high number of parasitic infections, the rates of allergies and asthma are way lower. Meanwhile, in developed nations where we have very few parasites, those allergic diseases are just skyrocketing. It's a really compelling inverse relationship.
So after all that, what's the big takeaway? I think it's just the incredible, mind-boggling complexity of our immune system. It's this powerful, sophisticated defense force. But as we've just seen, it's also a double-edged sword that can cause some serious harm when it misfires.
And that really leaves us with a pretty provocative final thought. In our quest to protect ourselves from every germ and parasite out there, have we fundamentally changed the job description for our own immune systems? Is it possible that our greatest defender is becoming a victim of its own success? Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining me.